I would like to share with you the Three-Fifths Compromise is not a pro-discrimination compromise. It was not a pro-discrimination or a slave compromise that the founders made. It was actually just the opposite. So what they did is they came up with a Three-Fifths Compromise. They said you will only get 3/5 of a vote when it comes to your slave. And what that did, it actually limited the number of pro-slave representatives in Congress by 40%.
Limited? No, it allowed more pro. Yeah, why would a white guy lie about slavery and racism?
But they're not taught that today. And that's why you had the Senate Democrats who were getting up talking about the Three-Fifths Compromise like it was some sort of terrible thing in our past. It was not. It actually was the exact opposite that helped to root out slavery. Go look them up and you will find that the Three-Fifths Compromise and many other things like that were designed to make sure that justice was equal for all people and equality really meant equality.
No, not at all. It ensured that slavery continued. They shouldn't have compromised. It was a compromise to ensure that slavery could continue. I'm going to take you to Indiana, where a Republican apparently really stoked on the Three-Fifths Compromise. Thinks the Three-Fifths Compromise is amazing. Ponder Monkey, welcome in. Republican posts video defending law that declared slaves 3/5 of a person. Indiana Lieutenant Governor Micah Beckwith appeared in a Twitter video praising the so-called Three-Fifths Compromise established at the Constitutional Convention. The law determined that for the purposes of representation in Congress and the Electoral College, slaves would be counted as 3/5 of a person. Beckwith posted the video in response to a debate over a Senate bill which was compared to the Three-Fifths law by Democrats. Sitting on the edge of his desk, the Lieutenant Governor said that the Constitutional Compromise was a great move. Let's watch this jackass say this shit.
Lieutenant Governor Micah Beckwith, want to give you an update on a bill, Senate Bill 289, which is called Unlawful Discrimination Bill. Senator Byrne is carrying that bill. It was in the Senate just a few minutes ago. Well, if you were watching or listening to the Senate...
Now, I'm pretty sure he's talking about the state Senate in Indiana, not the federal Senate.
You were trying to fall asleep, and we're trying to get some good background noise on. You might have been listening. The Senate on the Democrat side, they got up and they started talking about how this bill embodies something to the effect of the Three-Fifths Compromise. They were bringing that up. They were saying this is a bad bill because it actually encourages discrimination, just like the Three-Fifths Compromise, going all the way back to the foundations of our nation. I would like to share with you the Three-Fifths Compromise is not a pro-discrimination compromise. It was not a pro-discrimination or a slave compromise that the founders made. It was actually just the opposite. It was a compromise that the North made with the South. At the time, there were basically 13 independent nations. They had not really created a constitution. They were sort of a European Union-esque nation, and they were saying to the pro-slave states, hey, if you want to count your slaves to have representation, more representation in Congress, we're not going to let you do that, because they knew that that would codify things like slavery into our nation. And the North stood up to the South. And they said, we're going to, if you're going to count your property, because the South says, hey, this is our property, but we want to count them in the congressional representation. We want to count them in the census. At the time, there was 30,000 people would equal one member of Congress. And so they said, we're going to count our slaves. We're going to get more members of Congress in the South.
Yeah, he's kind of got his timeline wrong there.
They came back to the South and they said, fine, if you want to count your property, your slaves, as whole people, we're going to count our property. We're going to count our tables. We're going to count our chairs. We're going to count all the stuff that we have in our house. And the South said, well, you can't do that. And they said, well, you're doing it with your property. We're doing it with our property. So what they did is they came up with a Three-Fifths Compromise. They said, you will only get 3/5 of a vote when it comes to your slave. And what that did, it actually limited the number of pro-slave representatives in Congress by 40%. This was a great move by the North.
Limited? No, it allowed more pro. Goddamn motherfucker.
To make sure that slavery would be eradicated in our nation. They knew what they were doing. But now here you
No, they didn't.
Senate Democrats in today's American Republic who do not understand that. They think the Three-Fifths Compromise was something that was a scourge on black people. That's
Yes,
what
it was.
we get to this place. We got to this place because of DEI in education. We got to this place because you have professors at woke schools that will not teach the history of what actually happened back in the foundations of our nation. Many men and
woke moralists. We'll see who cancels who.
The idiot with the tortured history lesson just said. Lenny, good evening, my friend.
leaders in our nation's history knew how wicked slavery was. They knew that God had created even black people, white people, red people, all people in his image, and they were fighting.
Libertad is correct. Doing some Steiner-esque math up in
But
here.
then you take my 75% chance of winning and then add 66 and 2/3%. I got 141 and 2/3 chance of winning.
Yeah, why would a white guy lie about slavery and racism?
For equality for all. But they're not taught that today. And that's why you had the Senate Democrats who were getting up talking about the Three-Fifths Compromise like it was some sort of terrible thing in our past. It was not. It actually was the exact opposite that helped to root out slavery and lead us into a more perfect union that we now see where black, white, red, brown, all people can have equal representation under the law. That's what the Three-Fifths Compromise was all about. So don't buy into the DEI radical revisionist history that is happening in today's culture. Know your history. Go back and study the documents. Read them for yourself like I have. Go look them up and you will find that the Three-Fifths Compromise and many other things like that were designed to make sure that justice was equal for all people and equality really meant equality.
No, not at all. It ensured that slavery continued. They shouldn't have compromised. It was a compromise to ensure that slavery could continue. It wasn't some grand scheme to make sure that they could end slavery later. My God.
For all. So that's what's going on in the Senate today. Glad to keep you updated. Thanks for everyone tuning in and for all you're doing to keep our nation and our state the greatest it can possibly be.